The day started like any other for Michelle Carter, but little did she know it would become one that changed her life forever. Michelle was no ordinary traveler. She was a self-made entrepreneur who had built a $900 million baby food empire from scratch. Her journey wasn't easy. She worked long nights, faced countless rejections, and fought hard to prove herself in an industry dominated by big names. But today, she wasn't thinking about those struggles. Instead, she felt a sense of pride as she walked through the bustling international airport, pushing her toddler's stroller while carrying a bag filled with samples of her organic baby products. Her destination? A meeting with potential investors who could help take her company global. For months, Michelle had been preparing for this moment. She envisioned shelves stocked with her jars of nutrient-rich baby food in stores worldwide, helping parents feed their children healthy meals without compromising quality or ethics. It was more than just business, it was her passion, her purpose. And now, all she needed was this final push to make her dream come true. As she navigated through the crowded terminal, Michelle couldn't help but notice the energy around her. Travelers rushed past, dragging suitcases and clutching boarding passes. Families huddled together near gates, kids giggling as they played with toys. The hum of announcements over the intercom blended with snippets of conversations in different languages, creating a symphony of sounds unique to airports. Despite the chaos, Michelle found comfort in the rhythm of it all. Airports were places of transition, where people embarked on new adventures or returned home after long journeys. Today, she thought, marked the beginning of her next chapter. But as Michelle approached the security checkpoint, her focus shifted back to the task at hand. She carefully placed her belongings onto the conveyor belt, a laptop, a small pouch of personal items, and a few jars of her signature baby food. The jars were neatly packed, each labeled with her brand's logo, a tiny sprout symbolizing growth and nourishment. These weren't just products to Michelle. They represented years of dedication, late-night recipe testing, and sleepless nights spent perfecting every detail. They were a piece of her heart, tucked safely inside glass containers. While waiting for her turn, Michelle glanced down at her sleeping toddler nestled snugly in the stroller. Her little one looked so peaceful, completely unaware of the world spinning around them. Smiling softly, Michelle brushed a stray curl off her child's forehead. This was why she worked so hard, to build a better future, not just for her family, but for families everywhere. As she stood there, surrounded by strangers yet feeling deeply connected to her mission, Michelle allowed herself a quiet moment of gratitude. Little did she know, within minutes, this calm would be shattered by an encounter that would test her strength, resilience, and resolve. As Michelle stepped up to the security checkpoint, she greeted the officer with a polite smile, ready to cooperate, fully. Officer Greg Larson, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, barely acknowledged her greeting. His eyes scanned her belongings on the conveyor belt, lingering suspiciously on the jars of baby food. At first, Michelle thought nothing of it. Traveling with homemade goods often raised questions, and she was used to explaining her products to curious strangers. But as Officer Larson picked up one of the jars, his tone quickly shifted from neutral to condescending. "What's this?" he asked, holding the jar up as if it were something unfamiliar or strange. "It's organic baby food," Michelle replied calmly, maintaining her composure. "I make it myself for my daughter." "Officer," Larson smirked, glancing at the label before turning back to Michelle. "Homemade? Looks like you're trying to pass off some cheap stuff as high-end. Are you sure this is even safe?" Michelle felt a flicker of irritation but pushed it aside. She'd encountered skeptics before, people who doubted her abilities, because of her background or appearance. Still, she explained patiently, "It's completely safe. My company specializes in organic baby food. We follow strict safety guidelines." But instead of listening, Officer Larson seemed more interested in mocking her. He turned to his colleague standing nearby and said loudly enough for others to hear, "Guess anyone can slap a sticker on a jar these days and call it premium." A few nearby travelers exchanged uncomfortable glances, sensing the tension building. The comment stung, but Michelle reminded herself to stay calm. She knew better than to let someone else's negativity derail her day. However, things escalated when Officer Larson began inspecting her other items unnecessarily. He rummaged through her bag, pulling out documents related to her business meetings and flipping through them dismissively. "So you're saying you're some big entrepreneur now?" he asked sarcastically. "Funny, I wouldn't have guessed." His tone carried an unmistakable edge, laced with assumptions about who Michelle was and what she could achieve. It wasn't just skepticism, it was disrespect, plain and simple. Other passengers waiting in line started whispering among themselves, watching as the situation unfolded. Some looked sympathetic, while others appeared uneasy, unsure whether to intervene. When Officer Larson finally waved her forward after what felt like an eternity, Michelle grabbed her belongings and moved toward the exit. But the damage had already been done. The encounter left her feeling shaken, not because of the inconvenience but because of the underlying message. That her success didn't matter. That her identity made her achievements less valid in his eyes. As she pushed her stroller away from the checkpoint, Michelle couldn't shake the weight of his words. They lingered in her mind, gnawing at her confidence despite her best efforts to brush them off. For a moment she considered letting it go. After all, arguing wouldn't change his attitude. But deep down, Michelle knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or treated unfairly because of stereotypes. This wasn't simply an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern, one that demanded attention. And as much as she wanted to focus on her upcoming meeting, Michelle realized she might need to address this injustice, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved respect regardless of their race or profession. As Michelle moved away from the security checkpoint, her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the strap of her bag and tightened her grip on the stroller. The weight of Officer Larson's words still hung over her like a dark cloud. She tried to focus on the path ahead, reminding herself that she had an important meeting to prepare for. But the sting of humiliation refused to fade. Every step felt heavier than the last, and though she wore a mask of calmness inside, she was battling a storm of emotions. Anger, frustration, and sadness all swirling together. What made it worse was the fact that the entire scene hadn't gone unnoticed. Passengers waiting in line had witnessed every moment of the exchange, their expressions ranging from discomfort to outright disapproval. Some whispered quietly among themselves, shaking their heads at Officer Larson's behavior. Others pulled out their phones, recording snippets of the interaction without saying a word. Michelle could feel their eyes on her, watching as she tried to compose herself after such a public display of disrespect. Though most seemed sympathetic, she couldn't help but wonder how many were judging her too, silently questioning if there was any truth to the officer's accusations. Her toddler stirred in the stroller, breaking the tension momentarily. Michelle glanced down at her daughter, whose innocent face reminded her why she worked so hard every day. This wasn't just about her. It was about creating a better future for her child, one where she wouldn't have to endure the same biases and prejudices. But as tears welled up in Michelle's eyes, she realized this moment was bigger than both of them. It was about standing up against injustice, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been made to feel small because of the color of their skin or the work they did. Despite the overwhelming emotions, Michelle refused to let the situation break her spirit. Instead, she straightened her posture, took a deep breath, and continued walking. Her mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. Should she report the incident? Would anyone even care? Or would she be dismissed again, told that she was overreacting, or making a mountain out of a molehill? For a brief moment, doubt crept in, whispering that maybe it wasn't worth the trouble. After all, she had worked tirelessly to build her brand and reputation. Picking a fight with an airport authority might only bring negative attention. But then something shifted inside her. Michelle remembered the countless times she'd faced obstacles in her journey as an entrepreneur. There were moments when investors doubted her vision, critics questioned her abilities, and competitors tried to undermine her success. Yet each time she chose to rise above the negativity, using those challenges as fuel to push forward. Why should this be any different? If anything, this encounter highlighted the very reasons she started her business: to challenge stereotypes, inspire others, and create opportunities where none existed before. By the time she reached a quiet corner of the terminal, Michelle had made up her mind. She wouldn't stay silent, not this time. Pulling out her phone, she opened her email app and began drafting a message to her legal team. As she typed, her fingers moved with purpose, fueled by a mix of determination and resolve. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it was necessary. This wasn't just about seeking justice for herself. It was about sending a message that no one should be treated unfairly because of who they are or what they look like. Even as tears threatened to spill over, Michelle allowed herself a small smile. In that moment, she felt a spark of empowerment, a reminder that she was stronger than any insult or act of discrimination. And though the road ahead might be difficult, she was ready to face it head-on, knowing that her voice mattered and that change often began with courage. Within hours, the footage of Michelle's encounter with Officer Larson began circulating online. Someone in the security line had posted a short video clip on social media, capturing the officer's dismissive tone and condescending remarks. The post quickly gained traction, sparking outrage among viewers who were appalled by what they saw. Comments flooded in, condemning Officer Larson's behavior and expressing support for Michelle. "This is unacceptable," one user wrote. "No one deserves to be treated like this." Another added, "Her success speaks for itself. Shame on him for trying to tear her down." As the video spread, hashtags like "Raw Respect Black Women" and "Stand with Michelle" started trending across platforms. Influencers, activists, and even celebrities joined the conversation, amplifying Michelle's story and calling for accountability. News outlets picked up the story, airing segments that highlighted not only the incident but also Michelle's remarkable journey as a Black woman entrepreneur. Journalists praised her resilience, noting how she had built a $900 million brand despite facing numerous challenges along the way. Overnight, Michelle became a symbol of strength and determination, a beacon of hope for marginalized communities everywhere. The overwhelming response took Michelle by surprise. As she scrolled through her phone, reading messages from strangers around the world, she felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was deeply moved by the outpouring of support. People shared their own experiences of discrimination, thanking her for speaking up and inspiring them to do the same. Parents posted photos of their children enjoying her baby food, tagging her company and expressing gratitude for products that aligned with their values. It was heartwarming to see how her work had touched so many lives. On the other hand, the constant attention brought its own challenges. Every notification reminded her of the painful encounter, forcing her to relive the humiliation over and over again. Friends and colleagues urged her to take a break from social media, but Michelle found it hard to disconnect. She wanted to stay informed, to understand the impact her story was having. Still, she couldn't ignore the toll it was taking on her mental health. Late at night, after putting her toddler to bed, she sat alone in her hotel room, staring at the glowing screen of her phone. Tears streamed down her face as she read hateful comments from trolls questioning her credibility and accusing her of exaggerating the situation. Despite the negativity, Michelle refused to let it overshadow the positive momentum. Her company saw a surge in sales, with customers flocking to buy her products in solidarity. Orders poured in from all over the country, overwhelming her team with demand. Retailers reached out, eager to stock her items on their shelves. Investors who had been hesitant before suddenly expressed renewed interest in partnering with her. While some might have seen this as an opportunity to capitalize on free publicity, Michelle remained focused on her mission, providing high-quality, nutritious food for families while advocating for fairness and equality. Amidst the whirlwind, Michelle made a conscious decision to channel the attention into meaningful action. She recorded a heartfelt video message addressing her supporters and sharing her perspective on the incident. Speaking directly to the camera, she thanked everyone who stood by her side and emphasized the importance of standing against racism and bias. "This isn't just about me," she said firmly. It's about creating a world where no one has to endure this kind of treatment because of who they are. Together, we can make a difference. By the end of the day, Michelle realized that her story had struck a chord far beyond anything she could have imagined. What began as a humiliating encounter at an airport checkpoint had transformed into a global movement, uniting people from different backgrounds under a shared goal, demanding respect and justice for all. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, Michelle knew she wasn't walking it alone. The next morning, Michelle woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous day had shaken her, but they also ignited a fire within her, a determination to turn this painful experience into something meaningful. She knew that staying silent would only allow similar injustices to continue unchecked. This wasn't just about holding Officer Larson accountable. It was about addressing the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to happen in the first place. With clarity in her mind and resolve in her heart, Michelle decided to take bold action. Her first step was filing a formal complaint against Officer Larson and requesting a thorough investigation into his conduct. She provided detailed accounts of the incident, including timestamps and witness statements from fellow travelers who had been present during the encounter. Alongside the complaint, she submitted copies of the viral video footage, ensuring there was undeniable evidence of the officer's discriminatory remarks. Michelle didn't want revenge. She wanted accountability. She believed strongly that no one should wield authority in a way that perpetuated bias or disrespect, especially in public spaces meant to serve everyone equally. But Michelle didn't stop there. As the founder of a major brand, she recognized the power she held as a business leader. Her company had recently signed a lucrative sponsorship deal with the airport where the incident occurred, a partnership worth millions of dollars annually. After much thought, Michelle announced that her company would pull its sponsorship until significant changes were made to address racial bias among airport staff. It was a risky move, one that could cost her business partnerships and revenue in the short term. Yet she felt it was necessary to send a clear message. Discrimination has consequences, even on a corporate level. The announcement sent shockwaves through industries far beyond baby food manufacturing. News outlets covered the story extensively, highlighting how Michelle's decision underscored the economic influence of marginalized communities. Companies began reevaluating their own practices, realizing that consumers increasingly valued brands that stood for fairness and equality. Social media buzzed with praise for Michelle's courage, while critics accused her of overreacting or using the situation for publicity. But Michelle remained unfazed by the backlash. She understood that change often came with resistance, and she was willing to face it head-on if it meant paving the way for progress. In addition to taking legal and financial actions, Michelle turned her focus toward advocacy. She reached out to civil rights organizations and community leaders, seeking advice on how to create lasting change. Together, they brainstormed ideas for workshops and training programs aimed at educating law enforcement officials about racial sensitivity and unconscious bias. Michelle envisioned these initiatives extending beyond airports, reaching schools, workplaces, and other institutions where prejudice persisted. By investing in education and awareness, she hoped to foster environments where respect and dignity weren't optional but expected. As days passed, Michelle found herself juggling multiple roles: entrepreneur, advocate, spokesperson, but she embraced each one wholeheartedly. Every interview she gave, every meeting she attended, and every email she sent reinforced her commitment to creating a better future. Though the process was exhausting, it also filled her with hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, Michelle saw glimmers of possibility, a chance to not only heal from her own pain, but also inspire others to demand justice and equality. And so, as she sat in her office drafting plans for the upcoming workshops, Michelle allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought about the little girl asleep in the next room, dreaming peacefully without a care in the world. Someday, Michelle hoped, her daughter would grow up in a world where incidents like the one at the airport were relics of the past, a world built on empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. Until then, Michelle vowed to keep fighting, knowing that every small victory brought them closer to that brighter future. The days following Michelle's bold decision to pull her company's sponsorship from the airport were a whirlwind of reactions. On one side, there was overwhelming support from consumers, advocacy groups, and even some industry leaders who praised her courage and integrity. Social media lit up with messages of gratitude as parents posted pictures of their children enjoying her baby food alongside captions like, "We stand with you, Michelle." Retailers reported a surge in demand for her products, with many customers saying they wanted to show solidarity with her cause. It seemed that Michelle's actions had struck a chord, not just in the United States but globally, inspiring people to think critically about how businesses could drive social change. However, not everyone applauded her move. Critics emerged, questioning whether pulling the sponsorship was an overreaction or merely a publicity stunt. Some argued that while Officer Larson's behavior was unacceptable, punishing the entire airport wasn't fair to the thousands of employees who worked there. Others accused Michelle of using the incident to gain attention, claiming she was leveraging her success to amplify her voice unnecessarily. Online trolls joined the fray, flooding her social media accounts with hateful comments and baseless accusations. They mocked her achievements, dismissed her pain, and tried to paint her as someone seeking revenge rather than justice. Despite the negativity, Michelle refused to engage in arguments or respond to personal attacks. Instead, she focused on the bigger picture, using this moment to spark meaningful conversations about racism and bias. During interviews, she addressed the criticism calmly, explaining that her decision wasn't about vengeance but about accountability. "When we see something wrong, staying silent only allows it to continue," she said during a live television appearance. "I'm not asking for special treatment, I'm asking for basic respect. And if my actions can help create safer, more inclusive spaces for everyone, then I'll gladly take that step." Her measured responses earned her even more respect from those who followed the story closely. Many admired her ability to rise above the noise and stay focused on her mission. Meanwhile, her legal team worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering evidence and preparing for the investigation into Officer Lamar's conduct. The airport authority, feeling the pressure from both public scrutiny and financial losses due to the canceled sponsorship, issued a statement promising transparency and swift action. Still, Michelle remained cautious, knowing that promises alone wouldn't bring real change. To further amplify her message, Michelle launched a campaign called "Respect Starts Here," encouraging people to share their own stories of discrimination and resilience. She invited experts, activists, and everyday individuals to join virtual town halls where they discussed ways to combat systemic bias in various industries. These events drew massive audiences, sparking dialogues that extended far beyond the initial incident at the airport. Parents shared how they taught their children about diversity and inclusion. Educators talked about incorporating anti-bias curriculums in schools. And business owners discussed strategies for fostering equitable workplaces. Through it all, Michelle leaned on her support system, her family, friends, and colleagues, who reminded her why she started this journey in the first place. Her toddler, now walking confidently around the house, became a constant source of inspiration. Watching her daughter play without a care in the world reinforced Michelle's belief that every child deserved to grow up in a society free from prejudice. Though the backlash weighed heavily on her at times, she found strength in knowing she was fighting for something much larger than herself. By the end of the week, Michelle realized that the battle wasn't just against Officer Larson or the airport. It was against deeply ingrained attitudes and systems that perpetuated inequality. While progress might be slow, she took solace in the fact that her actions had already begun shifting perspectives. People were talking, listening, and learning, and that, she believed, was the first step toward lasting change. As she tucked her daughter into bed one evening, Michelle whispered softly, "Mama's working hard to make the world better for you, sweetheart." With renewed determination, she turned off the light, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the weeks passed, Michelle's efforts to create meaningful change began bearing fruit. The airport authority, feeling the heat from public pressure and the financial impact of losing her company's sponsorship, announced sweeping reforms aimed at addressing racial bias among its staff. They introduced mandatory racial sensitivity training for all employees, hired independent auditors to review their policies, and established a hotline for travelers to report discriminatory behavior. While Michelle acknowledged these steps as progress, she knew that true transformation would take time and vigilance. In addition to pushing for accountability at the airport, Michelle channeled her energy into launching initiatives that would have a lasting impact beyond this single incident. Partnering with advocacy groups, she developed a series of workshops designed to educate law enforcement officials about unconscious bias and cultural competency. These workshops weren't limited to airports. They expanded to police departments, schools, and corporate offices, reaching thousands of people across the country. Participants walked away with practical tools to recognize and address prejudice in their daily interactions, and many praised Michelle for her leadership in fostering open, honest conversations. But Michelle didn't stop there. She also turned her attention to empowering the next generation of entrepreneurs, particularly those from underrepresented communities. Her company launched a scholarship program called Sprouting Futures, which provided funding, mentorship, and resources to young innovators looking to start businesses in health, wellness, or sustainability. The program quickly gained traction, attracting applicants from diverse backgrounds who shared Michelle's vision of creating positive change through entrepreneurship. For many recipients, the scholarship was more than financial support. It was validation of their dreams and proof that barriers could be broken with determination and hard work. Amidst these efforts, Michelle continued using her platform to amplify marginalized voices. She hosted live discussions on social media, inviting thought leaders, activists, and everyday individuals to share their experiences and ideas for building a more inclusive society. These sessions became safe spaces where people felt heard and valued, sparking collaborations and inspiring action. One participant, a young mother named Jasmine, shared how Michelle's story had motivated her to start a community garden in her neighborhood, providing fresh produce to families struggling with food insecurity. "You showed me that one person can make a difference," Jasmine said during a live stream. "Now I want to do my part too." As her influence grew, so did the recognition of her work. Major publications featured Michelle on their covers, calling her a trailblazer and a catalyst for change. Awards rolled in, but Michelle remained humble, often redirecting praise to the countless individuals who supported her along the way. In speeches, she emphasized that her journey wasn't just about personal success, it was about collective progress. "I didn't get here alone," she said during an acceptance speech at a prestigious business summit. "Every challenge I faced taught me the power of community. Together, we're stronger." Despite the accolades, Michelle stayed grounded, finding joy in the small victories. She loved hearing from customers who told her how her baby food had become a staple in their homes, making mealtime easier and healthier for their families. She cherished moments spent with her daughter, watching her grow into a curious, confident toddler who already seemed eager to explore the world. And she found peace in knowing that her actions were planting seeds of hope, seeds that would one day blossom into a brighter, fairer future. By the end of the year, Michelle reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful day at the airport. What started as a humiliating encounter had transformed into a movement that touched lives around the globe. Though challenges still lay ahead, Michelle felt ready to face them head-on. With every initiative, every partnership, and every voice lifted, she moved closer to her ultimate goal, a world where everyone could stand tall, unafraid to pursue their dreams regardless of race, gender, or background. As she closed her laptop one evening preparing to spend quality time with her family, Michelle smiled softly, knowing she was exactly where she was meant to be. Months after the incident at the airport, the story reached its climax with a mix of justice, reflection, and hope for the future. The airport authority released the findings of their internal investigation, confirming that Officer Greg Larson had indeed acted out of line. His behavior was deemed unprofessional, discriminatory, and in violation of the airport's code of conduct. As a result, he was permanently dismissed from his position, sending a clear message that such actions would not be tolerated. In addition, the airport implemented sweeping reforms, including regular audits, diversity training programs, and community outreach initiatives to rebuild trust with travelers. For Michelle, this outcome was bittersweet. While she felt relief, knowing that accountability had been served, she couldn't help but think about all the others who might have faced similar treatment without the resources or platform to fight back. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel small because of the color of their skin or their background. She knew the road to equality was long, but moments like this reminded her that progress, no matter how slow, was possible. The public response to the resolution further solidified Michelle's role as a beacon of resilience and change. Her decision to pull her company's sponsorship proved to be more than an act of protest. It became a catalyst for broader conversations about corporate responsibility and social justice. Other businesses took note, reevaluating their own practices and partnerships to ensure they aligned with values of fairness and inclusion. Retailers reported record-breaking sales of Michelle's baby food, driven by consumers eager to support a brand that stood for something meaningful. Investors who had once hesitated now lined up to collaborate, recognizing the power of aligning with a mission-driven leader. But for Michelle, the true measure of success wasn't in numbers or accolades. It was in the impact she saw in people's lives. Parents wrote heartfelt letters thanking her for inspiring them to stand up against injustice in their own communities. Young entrepreneurs reached out to share how her scholarship program had given them the confidence to pursue their dreams. Educators incorporated her story into classroom discussions, teaching students about perseverance, empathy, and the importance of using one's voice for good. These stories filled Michelle with gratitude, reminding her that even the smallest actions could ripple outward, creating waves of positive change. As time went on, Michelle found herself reflecting on the journey, not just the challenges she overcame, but also the lessons she learned along the way. She realized that strength wasn't about never feeling afraid. It was about moving forward despite fear. It wasn't about avoiding pain, but transforming it into purpose. And it certainly wasn't about doing everything alone. It was about leaning on others, lifting them up, and building bridges wherever you went. One evening, as she tucked her daughter into bed, Michelle paused to watch her sleep. The little girl stirred slightly, clutching a stuffed toy shaped like a sprout, the same symbol that adorned her company's logo. Michelle smiled, thinking about how far she'd come since those sleepless nights spent perfecting recipes in her kitchen. Back then, she'd dreamed of feeding families nutritious food. Now she dreamed of nurturing a world where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. Her legacy wasn't just in jars of baby food or millions in revenue. It was in the lives she touched and the paths she helped pave. Michelle Carter wasn't just an entrepreneur or advocate. She was a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and compassion. And though the fight for justice and equality was far from over, she stood ready to continue leading by example, one step at a time. As she turned off the light and closed her daughter's bedroom door, Michelle whispered softly, "We're just getting started." With renewed determination, she walked toward the future, knowing that every challenge faced and every victory achieved brought her closer to the world she envisioned. A world built on respect, dignity, and endless possibilities.